Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I know we have people joining from all over the world and from all over the globe. Welcome to all of you on behalf of Mentee. Mentee is a global nonprofit organization that is offering guidance, knowledge sharing, and opportunities for marginalized people around the world. I'm Krishna Kulkarni, and I'm the outreach coordinator at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Chicago, and we're very proud to be hosting this session for you. I'm very excited to introduce you to Ahmed Sufyan Bayram, who will be talking about refugee entrepreneurship, insights, challenges, and the way forward. Ahmed is from Syria and is an award-winning social entrepreneur and author focused on supporting vulnerable populations, including those in conflict and fragile societies, as well as refugee access entrepreneurship. Ahmed works in the Middle East and Africa as a Middle East and Africa regional manager at Techstars, a global platform for investment and innovation. And since 2012, he has been helping hundreds of Syrians gain access to entrepreneurship opportunities and build a supportive environment as the Startup Roadshow Entrepreneurship Program Director and founder of Startup Syria. He wrote Entrepreneurship in Conflict Zones, Entrepreneurship in Exile, and Relentless to shed some light on the status quo of Syrian founders in conflict zones and as refugees in host countries. Welcome, Ahmed. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. Very happy to to join the conversations around refugees entrepreneurship. Yeah, engaging more with the people joining us.
Of course. Well, could you tell me a little bit about your background as and how it led you to both mentorship as well as encouraging entrepreneurship and startup culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I'm a Syrian myself. I'm born and raised in Syria. Back in 2009, a group of friends of mine started a company that called the Joy Maker, which is a platform to sell customized gift. At the beginning, we launched a couple of products in the market. We were able to raise some fund, although we didn't call it that way back time. We were just young people trying to create a new business. Our product in the market received like a great appreciation for some people around. We were been doing a good job for a year or so, and then sadly in 2011 and after the Syrian crisis, we're not able to continue with our business. The market around us changed, although we didn't do anything bad as a business, but the market were shifting dramatically. Our investors were not confident in investing in any businesses anymore. Some of them flee the country as well. So all of this changes. So Joy Maker was killed. There was no more joy to be able to sell anymore. And that got me to understand that building a company is not about um, having the nice product or be able to raise fund. Is more about having also a support ecosystem around you. And then this put me in a place where I want to work to support building startup ecosystem. A lot of friends of mine as well were graduating and then we were not able to find any job because unemployment rate back then, I think in 2013, 2013, reached more than 65% of unemployment rate, and maybe also like this is not official number, but probably it's also a bit higher. And for that, we start thinking about how about we build a startup an ecosystem and we build our own businesses, and we start building a couple of programs that help people who's interested to start matching together as a co-founders and build their own entrepreneurs. Later, after moving out for work in the US and now in Europe, I continue like following some of those stories that put together and some of those examples of people who step in, not just because they wanted to find a job, but also they wanted to find a solution for the problems they are facing. Some of them continue working during a conflict time and also moved to become a refugee. So I continue working with those people when they moved and made sure to support, to have like the supportive environment for them to continue building their businesses. As later joining Techstars, we are global networks that helps entrepreneurs succeed from inspiration to IPO through a variety of programs like community programs, like Startup Weekend or accelerator programs or venture capital, etc. Always like try to steal the network of Techstars, that global network, and also give it to the refugees entrepreneurs, and create something to help them create something in their new countries as well. So this is more about me, and I'm also like interested in kind of writing and researching. And I always thought, for example, like many of those refugees who flee out of the country, now they are, for example, settled down in countries like Turkey, Jordan, or Germany. Here in Germany, I thought, okay, now there's a supportive ecosystem. The German ecosystem as a startup is very much supportive, but that's not true. The conflict is still hunting many of those people down. And there's a lot of obstacles and challenges, not because of anything, just because they are refugees. So they have to navigate through many of those challenges. So I was like very much excited in terms of putting better and understanding and give it this more uh, academic study in that sense. The reports and the books that I published were not like academics books, rather than try to spotlight and document the life of refugees who came to a new country and would like to build the business um, to support his or her family. So yeah, that's more about myself actually. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Could you give us a sense of what the landscape of tech startups is in the Middle East and North Africa, given that that is kind of your portfolio at Techstars?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is like a larger like pool than the refugees, I would say, and mostly people they start to see we start to see a lot of movements about entrepreneurship started late, I would say 2000 and the beginning of 2001, 2002, we start to see more startups, and the more peaked or become like an interest after 2005, and we start recently seeing some unicorns in the MENA regions. It's MENA regions also like very kind of big, so we cannot like identify MENA region to be as a country by its own. So we need to divide this to sub-regions. So if you're talking about the Gulf country, which is technically the main hub of the accelerator programs, the incubators, the fund or the venture capital or the angel investors, because there is a lot of good economics working there in these countries. And also you have Levant or in Egypt, where a lot of people like in the MENA regions, they are young, they are um, thirsty to succeed. They wanted to work on their business. They wanted to continue working on their businesses and grow that. So you see a lot of talent is coming there before moving to the markets and start have also operating in the Gulf. Most of the people working on more logistical startups, tech startups, to my knowledge, but this is probably like also start to change. Many of them start to at the beginning focus on the region market was like untapped by many of the global markets and like many of the global startups that we're seeing. So we start to see Suit.com, who was like kind of cloning of Amazon, or Kareem, who was like cloning for Uber, and then later then both they get acquired by those global giant companies. So they start working on this, but like also at the same time we'll start to see startups are growing from the MENA region and going global, targeting European or American market. We recently all witnessed the IPO of Anghami, which is kind of Spotify, but for the MENA region, and focus on other, like extending, not just focus on the MENA region, but extend it to probably Asia and other countries as well, which is very much inspiring stories of two Lebanese co-founders starting from Beirut, growing their business to become an IPO, which is the first IPO happen in the MENA region. So recently we start to see those kind of big exits, unicorns, IPOs that inspire many young entrepreneurs. Small part of those are refugees themselves who's excited to work on their business. And actually in my presentation that I prepared, I wanted to focus on like 5 different lessons that I learned. So maybe instead of sharing slides, I can just jump in and talk about those through a conversation. One of the most important things for me, as we talked about the startups and what's happening at the ecosystem, and comparing this to the refugees, entrepreneurs and refugee startups, one of the main things, number one, that I learned when I started like working more with both. So through Techstars, I'm working with entrepreneurs who's looking to scale their values. They have a great ideas. They want to target their own markets, raise fund, and become a unicorn, and also working with refugees entrepreneurs as well. I thought it's thought at the beginning they are the same, but this is not necessarily true. Many of the refugees entrepreneurs, they're more survival entrepreneurs rather than high growth entrepreneurs. So what the difference between both? High growth entrepreneurs, just regular entrepreneurs who has an idea to solve particular problems he would like or she would like to build this company, build the business model, and grow to become a unicorn or have an IPO and maximize the wealth of the shareholders as a main target and focus of the business. While refugees entrepreneurs is mostly surviving entrepreneurs. They come to new countries with limited resources for many of them, with a new life they starting, and for them it's a new opportunity. So what they wanted to do here is to survive and have some income for the business, rather than also due to many challenges that facing them to start the work where maybe it's not regulated yet, refugees are not allowed to work, or any of those challenges, they started to create their own business. So they don't necessarily work with percentages of winning. It's not a loser game. They not necessarily wanted to become the next, let's say, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, or create the next Google. Or next Amazon, rather than it's a survival game. It's one chance for me that I want to take in life to secure income for me and for my family. So this was like very much shocking, because it helped us to understand where are they coming from, or what their goals, and how we better structure our help and support.
Yeah, thank you. So, coming from maybe that landscape of entrepreneurship in the Middle East, in the MENA region that you were discussing, what challenges and also maybe perhaps benefits do refugee entrepreneurs in coming to places like Germany, perhaps who you've mentored directly, what do they experience when they attempt to adapt to a new business culture in
Yeah.
Europe or in other contexts?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely a good question. And when I look to the challenges that facing refugees in general, or in specific refugees entrepreneurs, we can divide those into two main factors. One of them is external factors, which technically stuff that refugees have can or cannot be able to do anything about. Just we're talking here about many of refugees are not allowed to work in some sectors, or they cannot have their work permit. Many are struggling to open a bank account. Definitely, this is a difference between country to country, so the challenge can different, but it still exists. Even in a country like Germany, many people were rejected to open bank account just because of their backgrounds. So they've been classified as a risk for the bank, so they reject them from opening an account. And more of those freedom of movement. In some countries, refugees are not allowed to leave the refugees camps, and they still have to live in a camp. Although they have their own business, they would like to conduct some meetings, travel for those opportunities outside the camps, or maybe outside the country. They're still limited of movements. The other category, if we can put it, it's more about internal. So they are coming to new countries. It's up to they have to maybe learn the new language. For example, for the Afghani or Syrian or Iranian refugees coming to Europe, there's many different languages. They also have to face a challenge where it's a new market. They never examined this market before. They don't know the customers. They don't know the consumers' behaviors in this country. So they have to build these learnings and start working on it. And more of those also, they have to fight their own internal struggle of traumatizations that they've been faced, and post-traumatic disorders they have, if any, in these cases, and social inclusion to fit and integrate into society. So you see those two kind of elements. One challenge in particular combine those two. This is why now considered by many refugees as a number one challenge is raising fund for their businesses. Because in order for you to raise fund, you must have a registration, you must have a bank account, you must have a legal process already set, received your asylum, and you already have your new residency. as well as you need to prove you understand the market, you probably speak the language of the local investors so they can trust you more, understand the behaviors. So these two things, they come together for people who's raising fund. In my last research list that focus on the refugees entrepreneurs and the Syrian refugees entrepreneurs in neighboring country to Syria, where I interviewed 271 businesses around. 9 out of 10, they said raising fund is number one a challenge. Out of those 271, only 9 businesses were able to raise fund. Other may not try yet, but like they also consider it as to be a challenge for them. And that the reason, because if you combine those external factor and internal factor together, you have this one. And yet we still, recently we start to see a little bit movement there, but yet there's no direct focus on investing in refugees, or people look at the refugees to be as an opportunity for investment in that sense, or opportunity to grow their businesses and also make returns, rather than let's look at the refugees crisis usually as a humanitarian crisis that requires probably humanitarians aid, and in best cases economic development or personal development training to help them better integrate. But hopefully this will start to change with the time, as many of the refugees entrepreneurs start to prove their capabilities and their ability to create very good and high growth businesses.
Yeah, thank you. I think when you're speaking about fundraising and the challenges to making the case to investors, I wondered, in your capacity as a mentor for refugee entrepreneurs, what kind of advice do you provide when they are pitching their companies to investors or to people who could potentially raise funds for their organization? Because it seems like there are so many entrepreneurs among the refugee community, but unfortunately, usually the stereotype usually about immigrants, refugees, anybody coming in from another country is that the kind of set of jobs that they are qualified for tend to be, service jobs or very low level, entry level jobs, but not kind of creative or innovative opportunities. And I admire your work for trying to really change that narrative and give people the opportunity to start their own companies. So, but how do you kind of help them craft their pitch to investors?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do at first, like, try to help them be aware of those challenges and try to walk them through some of the solutions for those main challenges. We understand, like, for example, refugees are not allowed to register a company in a particular country, yet you can probably register through Atlas, like Stripe, outside as in a Delaware or C Corp, or maybe apply to Estonian e-visa or register in Ireland or any other solutions. So it's usually what happens is a case by case that you help them navigate through this particular challenge. What we also notice is definitely there is unconscious bias in the market toward refugees, as you describe it. Usually people think, as we said, like, it's not sustainable business. Maybe you are in this country and then you're probably going to leave later soon, but doesn't matter if I leave because it's a tech company. This can be working from anywhere. So there's also the unconscious bias for refugees. They need to also be aware of. Since you are aware of those challenges and those biases, then you try to build your pitch toward those. So many of the investors, where they think, oh, you're a refugee, so you are new in a country, you're only here for 3-4 days, and you probably did not choose to come here, so you did not study the market, which is true. I didn't. As a refugee, you don't choose where you have to. This is a luxury. You just end up being in this country for various reasons. But we try, like, if the entrepreneurs understand there could be a potential unconscious bias toward that, I need to focus a little bit more on the market. I need to show that I really understand the market. I really spend a lot of time and effort to understand my customers, to shadow them, work with them. I definitely face these problems. If we're talking about particular businesses who focus on the new market with you, The other things is also we try to work on is to educate the local the local ecosystem as well. So we always try to do kind of public demo days where we invite the local ecosystem to hear those people pitching. And they always come with a surprise, like, oh, I didn't know that Refuge is also focusing on blockchain, focusing in AI, focusing on those kind of new technologies. We always thought it's going to be like a small type of business, as you said yourself. So we try to break this stereotype by bridging the gap between both of them. In this sense, definitely investing in the refugees business require better understanding of their backgrounds, better understanding of their challenges. It probably takes more time. Where many refugees, for example, in the MENA region, rely probably on friends and family for bootstrapping to start their businesses. Also, this is globally. Refugees not necessarily can be able to do so because their family and their friends might also struggling and don't have income with them because they lost or their assets back home when they set out when they flee the country. So it's hard for them. So bootstrapping will also take much more time for them because they don't have this resources available. So this is more like have mutual understanding, be able to identify those problems and work toward them. And this is the reason why I published those ebooks and reports and like the stories about the refugees entrepreneurs and the examples of those people to highlight those challenges and to build this understanding in a sense of hopefully one day we'll live in a place where we don't see those challenges happening. Where also, just to mention, where my focus and particular studies were in Assyrian entrepreneurs. Once I published those reports many times, I received a lot of comments from refugees around the world. I say, oh, this is the same of us. Like, for example, refugees from Venezuela and Colombia reach out to me. It's like, this is exactly my challenge that I'm facing. Or people in South Sudan, now in Kenya, they also mentioned the same. Also in Asia, I've received some similar comments. So although the study focused a little bit on solely focused on the Syrian entrepreneurs, as I'm Syrian myself, easier for me to reach this data and know those people, but it's more like a general challenge. We hope that Ukrainian refugees also who are going to decide later to become entrepreneurs not to face those challenges, and we try to use those lesson learned that we gathered all about the years from working with refugees to put it open for people who now supporting Ukrainian refugees to be able to have a better support. Again, it's not just because they want to create a business, it's the survival things for them. And also refugees are more aware of their own challenges and their own problems, that the problem their society is having, and they are more likely to help it. And they are more likely as well to hire refugees. So it's a kind of win-win for everybody around the ecosystem where you can support a business that help other also vulnerable people who will later contribute by paying taxes and contribute with their businesses to the society and the host country as well.
Yeah, thanks. That was a fantastic answer. I did want to say, if anybody would like to ask questions, please feel free to use the raise hand feature or to type your questions in either the Q&A box or the chat box. You can access, I think, the raise hand from the menu at the bottom. So please, if we want to make this as interactive as possible. If you have questions for Ahmed, please feel free to ask away, and we can unmute you, or I'm happy to read out the questions as well. Ahmed, I know you had some slides and you had some content prepared. Is there anything that you'd like to share from that presentation before we kind of transition into the Q&A?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we can no need to share slides, maybe to go through those 5 lesson learned that
yes.
I got. We talked about the first thing, which is technically that refugees entrepreneurs not necessarily they are survival entrepreneurs, which is we outline the difference between high scale entrepreneurs. The other things that we see, it's very much common mistake for people who's working to help refugees entrepreneurs and like organizations, that they look at the refugees as a like a one portfolio or one profile, which is definitely not the case. Throughout the work with many refugees, there's a lot of challenges and different challenges and different behaviors that actually identify to be able to identify three type of refugees profile. First, and the most probably known in that sense, refugees in the camps. They are refugee entrepreneurs in camps. They are probably sometimes restricted from moving outside the camps, but also probably most of the cases they don't have a challenge open a business inside. So usually it's a more unstructured free market, let's say, and they don't have a language challenge because they are selling their own peers who coming with them or challenge to understand the new market in that sense. When those are pretty much different from the second portfolio, and just to mention also refugees in camps, it's count about like 9% of the refugees entrepreneurs based on the studies that are inducted. Second type of profile is more refugees outside the camps who's not necessarily hold a refugee status. They could come to this particular country as a student, but then they were stuck there, or they are currently working full-time job, but on the side they have their own businesses. Some of them they have residency cards, some of them still not, and this is hold the vast majority of the entrepreneurs, which is about 82% of the portfolio. Those face a lot of challenges as well, which is different than the one outside. This is a new market, a new language for them. They have to navigate through that. They must register the business because they're going to compete with that. There's restrictions for them in some of the countries where kind of business refugees are allowed to build or hold the majority of a company or not, etc. The last profile was what I call it portfolio entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs with means, which is entrepreneurs who are probably they are businessmen back in the countries. They have resources, and then when they cannot continue with their business, they moved to someone else. We see sometimes some business for business refugees laws technically focus on those people. So in some countries, yes, you are allowed to open a business, but you must have a certain money in your bank account. Where refugees who's also a student who would like to become entrepreneurs working in a garage or maybe in home, they cannot afford this particular money. So we see a lot of also confusing when they say, oh, refugees can work in these countries, they have a temporary passport, they can have residency, they can open a bank account. But when we look into details, we see, yeah, but it's required to hire, for example, 10 people, or it's required you to have more money in your bank account as a student you cannot afford. So focusing on this particular, be able to identify those categories can help you better support type of groups. Third, also lessons that I get, which is was quite interesting for me in particular, as working on and studying the Syrian refugee entrepreneur throughout the years, that every year we see there's an increase in female entrepreneurs participation. This doesn't mean necessarily they are empowered to open business, rather than the reasons for that, because they feel now with the economic situation, they are more obligated to support the family. So they start to be able to start the businesses mostly from home, to support their family and provide more resources to their business. To give a perspective for people who's watching, so in 2016, I did a study about the refugees entrepreneurs and tried to calculate the female participation, and was about 17.22. Another study that I published just recently at the end of 2021, the number jumped to 35.7. Again, this is a great thing that's happening, and we need to assure that female entrepreneurs are actually not just being forced to work, but rather than to be empowered. And those who's currently working, we need to make sure they are also continue working on their businesses before and be able to support them. The main reason, because again, the bad economics that force those women to participate in the ecosystem, but it's also a good opportunity for us to continue working and helping them. Um, yeah, so those are the ones that I wanted to focus on. We also focus about raising fund in the challenge as well. Um, my last things that was also seeing that's still till now the refugees response or refugee entrepreneurs response also still lack of innovation. And many entrepreneurs, refugees, they have those innovations. So we need to make sure that we invest in solutions that is working, invest in those people that hold the solutions. They know the community. Now we can be able to tap into new technologies through decentralizations or organizations. The Web3 and blockchain technologies can help us go through one of the challenges. To put this in an example, back in a time, refugees arriving to a new country, they have to wait probably weeks, and it could be months or it could be years in order to sort her situation or his situation in the sense of apply to asylum, get the paper there, get the approval, especially if they came to the country with no documentations because probably they get lost or burned or something happens. So it takes a lot of time for them to go through the process of asylum seeking and then the refugees process in order to take residency. Then they have to navigate through the process of opening bank accounts, learn the new language, find a job if that's allowed for them, and work on it. Where today, probably someone as a refugee can come to new countries with a new smartphone, not necessarily to be smart or access to internet, and they can able to do a job and receive payments through blockchain, through bitcoins or any currency, any digital currency, and then use this money to buy stuff or live or exchange that to money or even buy Tesla. Uh, if the digital currencies allows the process. So it's more now many of the barriers that we used to have before has been disrupted. We need to make sure that it's disrupted in the right way and make sure that we also provide an inclusive support for all entrepreneurs, not necessarily one portfolio, one profile than the others. So this is also a great conversation and a great topics that needs to be more investigated. What's the future of refugees response looks like within the use of this new technologies? What's danger this will be for them, and what advantages will be for them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Again, if anybody has questions, feel free to use the raise hand feature or to type questions in the chat. Ahmed, I wanted to ask. It seems like you've published a lot of work, and you've also written some ebooks. How can people access your work, your insights? Given that, of course, I'm sure it cannot be captured in the space of an hour. If we want to do further reading, where can we find that?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can definitely check the website, which is or like amadisb.com,
Okay.
or in social media and contact me. All those publications are available for free. My reason of doing those again is just to educate people about this particular group of refugees who decided to create their own businesses and work in their businesses and support them. So it's available for free for anyone who would like to get better learnings on those particular topics that we mentioned through the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we have any questions. So I think if you do have questions, feel free to contact Ahmed after the session on social media or through his website. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time and for sharing these insights with us. And I want to, again, thank you on behalf of both Mentee and the Center for Middle Eastern Studies. I hope we can host you again for another talk soon. And if anybody would like to learn more about Mentee's work, you can find information at this link, www.menteeglobal.org. And yes, we, Menti hosts lots of talks like this, so please feel free to sign up for the listserv and get publicity about future ones. And again, Ahmed, thank you so much for your time. Really
Well,
appreciate it.
thanks for you for the conversation. I think for mentees for the opportunity. Yeah, for people who's gonna watch this later or maybe watching on social media and stuff, like yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any question. And again, the space is allowed for more collaboration among us all. So we need to connect. So feel free to connect and continue the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ahmed. Have a great day. Take care.